Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video of Just Hack It, we're gonna be reviewing this thing over here. This is a Mamba F50 Pro 6S 50 amp 4-in-1 ESC. And before we proceed, I want to clarify that this video hasn't been sponsored by Ditone in any means. That being said, this is the packaging in which it arrives. It is a standard bubble wrap packaging, and this is a soft packaging. In my personal opinion, I feel like Ditone should have used something like this. This is a plastic box, which would have been much better compared to this thing. Now let's move on to a ESC. Now this is a standard ESC, 30mm into 30mm ESC, and the things which they have included in the packaging is the XT30 connector without any wires. So you'll have to make your own XT60 connectors, and since they have not included wires, that is a bit of shame, because if you are a newbie or a beginner, you're gonna have some problems sourcing this wires since they are not supplied with the ESC. And they have also included a Rubicon ZLS series 470 microfarad capacitor. Now again, in my personal opinion, I feel like 470 microfarad capacitance is pretty less compared to what this ESC is offering. Like this is a 50 amp continuous 6S ESC, and the capacitance which they have offered is 470 microfarad, which is pretty less compared to what other brands are supplying, like something compared to this thing. Now this is a capacitor over here. This is a Panasonic FM 1000 microfarad 35 volt capacitor, and this is a 55 amp ESC. But still, they have supplied a ZLS series capacitor, which is actually a nice thing because ZLS series has the lowest ESR value in the Rubicon capacitor family. Now let's look at the ESC layout, and they are using M3 holes over here, and that's actually a bad thing and maybe a setback for most of the users, because since they are M3 hole size, you can't use some rubber gummies. And if you guys don't know what rubber gummies does, like in case if you're gonna have a hard crash, if rubber gummies are there, it will gonna prevent your ESC from getting damaged due to the impact. But since they are not having any kind of rubber gummies in this ESC hole, there will be high chance that during a crash you're gonna break something. Now let's look at the MOSFETs they are using. Now these are some real Toshiba MOSFETs which they are using. Now these MOSFETs have been rated for 30 volt and 60 amp continuous current. And for your peace of mind, I'll be flashing the screenshot right over here in the top right section, and I'll be also providing the link in the description. So in case for your peace of mind, you can just go and check it out. Other than that, the filtration seems normal. They are using some dual shunt resistors for your current calibration. And other than that, you can also see that they have provided the direct solder method for the pins in case if you directly want to solder the ESC to the FC, and in case you don't trust the connectors. Other than that, let's look at the logic board. Now this logic board seems to be done very nicely compared to what Ditone has done in the past. You can see here I have a Mamba F25 ESC, and you can see the SMD level work done on this ESC is pretty pathetic, and compared to their past ESCs, this has been done very nicely. So that's a good thing which Ditone is doing over here. Other than that, you may see that the pads have a large spacing, large area, so they'll be easy to solder. Other than that, everything seems normal in this ESC. Now let's talk about the cons. The first thing which I'll be mentioning is that the SMD level components which they are using are pretty close to the power lines. So that actually makes increases the chance of you damaging some of these SMD level components, making your ESC useless. So you have to be pretty careful while soldering on or working on this ESC that you don't damage any kind of these SMD components. Now let's talk about Soldering Xt 60 on this ESC. Now since this ESC has some slots in it, so basically you're just soldering this wire in empty space, and it is pretty difficult to do that. You literally have to place your Xt60 wires into a thin space, and where you have to do some tricks in order to like make sure that this wire is touching the sides of that wall. And in case if you are using a lower AWG wire, you're gonna have a more problem, like if you're using a 14 gauge wire or a 16 gauge wires. Now those wires will not even touch the walls of this hole or compartment which they have supplied, so it will be pretty hard for you to solder a XT60 to it. Other than that, they have supplied dedicated holes for your capacitor, which makes the life pretty easy, at least on paper. But when I was soldering and working on it, I noticed when you solder the Xt60 cable to the Esc and when you try to solder the capacitor, it will be really hard for you to do that because these the capacitor holes are directly connected to the main power lines, due to which heating them is pretty hard, and during that time you may cause some damage to the Esc itself. So it is highly recommended, in case you are using a capacitor, please install it before you install the Xt60 cable. And other than that, everything seems normal in this Esc. So we'll be using this Esc on this custom build which I have right over here. This is a custom Froglight frame with 3B motors, and we're gonna be using this Esc on this particular frame, and we're gonna be testing how good it flies, and really if the capacitance which they have supplied with the Esc is good enough to prevent any noise or any kind of thing. So that will be the part 2 of this video. Other than that, the Esc is pretty nice, and it is really affordable option in case if you compare it with other brands which are selling the same spec Esc at much higher price. But also you are compromising a bit on quality, because I have noticed that in case if you just do some kind of this thing, a scratch on the Esc, you're gonna notice you can see the copper pad visible immediately. So they have a serious problem with the masking on the PCB. Other than that, that's it for today's review. I hope you guys like this video. In case if it was really helpful for you, please consider subscribing to this channel. Thanks a lot, guys.